The September 8th meeting of the Westborough Conservation Commission is in session. Let me read the legal announcement here. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general laws, chapter 30A, section 18, and the governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Westborough Conservation Commission will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or a requirement to attend this meeting can be found at www.town.westborough.ma.us/sites/files/files/COVID-19 meeting info 1 PDF. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the Town of Westborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting on the Conservation Commission's website, www.town.westborough.ma.us/conservation-commission/board/news/conservation-remote-meeting-information. With that being said, the first item on the agenda is a continued hearing notice of intent for Kenneth Marble, map 21, parcel 209, 57 Brigham Street, DEP file number 332-911. Mr. Scott?
Yes, how are you? Good evening. I believe at the close or the end of the last meeting, I presented the plans or the plan, which is to expand or relocate some parking at formerly IFCO facility, now the 4840 facility at 57 Brigham Street, in order that the loading bays, the loading docks on the west side of the building become usable again. Presently, a bunch of the tenants park up against the building. That meant expanding the parking lot towards the wetland area, and so we filed both site plan review, which has been issued by the town, as well as the notice with the commission. And there were no questions from the commission last time, but we subsequently revised the plans based on input from the engineering folks through the site plan review, as well as some discussions I had with Mr. McCarron and Ms. Wittes. And the plans were returned to the town staff a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. And to my knowledge, all the conditions or all the comments that had been raised had been addressed with the plans.
Okay. Anything else from the board? Any questions from the board? Jordan or Sherry, do you have any input?
No, Mike said it very well. Our town engineering staff is satisfied. They've issued an approval letter. So I think in terms of Sherry and I, we're satisfied as well.
Okay, hearing nothing else, I need a motion to close the notice of intent hearing for 57 Brigham Street, map 21, parcel 209, DEP file number 332901.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Hold on a second. Okay, roll call vote. Andy Kenningsburg, yes. Tim Buckaloo,
Yes.
Stephanie Kelly, absent. Justin Lundberg,
Yes.
Gary Kessler. Gary Kessler.
Somehow the muting stuff isn't working the way it used to. Yes.
Okay, all right. And Kelly Marston.
Yes.
Vote passes by a vote of 5-0. Excuse me.
Andy, you,
0.
Jerry's
Oh.
here. If you, don't you see my
I
video?
do now.
Oh.
Didn't before.
I'm here
Okay.
too. Sorry, I'm late.
Everyone's here. We just were voting to close the hearing for 57 Brigham Street. Did you?
Yeah, I heard Mike. I was here for Mike's.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Stephanie, did you hear the discussion about closing the hearing for 57 Brigham Street?
No, I didn't.
Okay, I'm just gonna mark you as abstaining from this vote because you didn't hear it. So the motion passes 6-0. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, the next item on the agenda is the continued meeting request for determination of applicability, Keola's Commuter Services Railway right-of-way. Anybody here?
They've asked for a continuance to the next meeting.
Okay, I just wanted to see if anybody was here, but, okay, so I need a motion. Oops, wait a minute.
The third motion on your list, Andy.
Thank you. Okay, why are there's two? Well, never mind. So I need a motion to continue the request for determination of applicability for Keola's Commuter Services for confirmation of wetlands boundaries associated with this 5-year right-of-way vegetation management plan by request of the applicant on to October 13th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call. Andy Kenningsburg. Yes. Tim Bucklew.
Yes.
Stephanie Kelly.
Yes.
Justin Lundberg.
Yes.
Gary Kessler.
Yes.
Jerry Cushing.
Yes.
Kelly Marston.
Yes.
Vote passes unanimously. We have so much fun here. Okay. Okay, so that item has been addressed. The next, it's after 7, well, it's close to 7:10 p.m. Discussion of 85 East Main Street plan changes. So. Who is handling that?
Lou Amorati from Gilmore Building Company. I believe Eric Gilmore Building Company is on, and Bob Arcieri, the property owner, is on as well.
Okay. Floor is yours, sir.
I'd like to, I guess, start with the erosion control. And then we can move on from there. But the first thing I wanted to say about the erosion control is that certainly, it wasn't where it is where it always has been. WDA staked out where it was supposed to go. We placed the silt fence in the wattles according to their staking. Derek Sari came out and reviewed and verbally approved it. So we built to it. So, certainly, having gone into the 30-foot offset wasn't done maliciously. All of the material that was put in there really is organic. I'm not sure, if it really needs to be adjusted or not, but certainly we'd be willing to do if it was deemed necessary.
Okay. Jordan, you have any thing you want to add right now before we go for comments from the board?
No, not really. I had included a summary in the Google Doc that I provided the commission of the issues that we spoke about, or you addressed and spoke about at our last meeting.
Mm-hmm.
The disturbance of the, into the 30-foot no disturb zone was one issue. There were two others. The riprap slope area was installed, and that wasn't per the approved plan. And of course, it's up to the commission whether you accept that. And then the other note I have is that there were changes that were made to the approved plans that were not, addressed to and approved by the commission. So those are kind of the three issues. And I think Mr. Amarati just addressed the first. And so that's sort of my comment on it.
Well,
With the riprap.
excuse me, sir, one moment. The only thing we have in writing is from, I believe it was WDA, saying that the limit of work was staked as in the plan by, I think it was WDA wrote that letter. You have a verbal, you said, from Derek Sari that he said that it was okay. You have nothing in writing from him?
Not to my knowledge. Eric?
Yeah, when we did the staking, at WDA did the staking out there, we then, installed the silt fence according to that staking. Derek came by to review the silt fence to make sure it was installed, according to spec, and then said, go ahead and proceed.
Okay,
Now,
so he was just looking at this, making sure that the silt fence and the staking that was installed correctly. He wasn't approving the layout.
did he go out there and do any survey points? No, absolutely not.
Okay.
No. And what could have happened? Was there a stake that got knocked out at some point or didn't get put in? Possibly. And that's the discrepancy of whatever that 6 or 8 feet, or, there's like a little triangular piece there. It's entirely possible.
Okay.
That's why Lou is saying, if it needs to and it comes to it, then we'll just, pull it back and plant some grass seed there. I'm not,
Yeah.
Like I said, it wasn't an intentional thing.
All right. You're asking for a certificate of compliance, and none of the work on that slope is part of the approved plan. Not the limit of work, not what you put on that slope, the missing plantings that were supposed to be there. None of that is according to the approved plan. So that's my comment first. I'd like to hear from the rest of the board, please.
Well, I think that Jordan outlined how these things are problematic very well in his communication to us the other day. And I feel the same as you do, that this work wasn't done in accordance with what was approved. So it's kind of hard to give a certificate of compliance when it wasn't done in the same manner that it was supposed to be.
I have to agree.
Yeah.
My question is whether, as a practical matter, ripping up the inappropriate material and replacing it with loam and seeded lawn would be a good remediation. I mean, is that what would make the site better in the long run, in the short run? How do we balance those things? I mean, I accept the fact that the determination that this was done outside the original order of conditions, but I'm not sure, one, how much of an actual impingement it is, and two, whether it has to be corrected the way we're suggesting. Those are just my questions.
And Tim, on that point, I agree with everybody. It's not in compliance, but I think the next step is suggestions about what we do about it, which leads to, I think, where you left off. And are there some things that we can agree upon to get it in a condition where we can accept it, even though it's different from the original plan? I also agree that we should try to minimize any impacts to it. One of the big concerns is the snow removal.
Yes.
I think if they dump, I'm okay with the way it is right now, but the biggest issue in my mind is how you factor the snow removal area, disposal area on that site under the current conditions. So I'd like to hear how that might be remedied, and if it fits something that's different from the original plan, and maybe it's something we can still approve.
Well, one comment I would like to make is setting a precedent here where we approve a plan in a permit. They go ahead and do something almost entirely different and ask for forgiveness. I don't think that's a good precedent to set, because another proponent can come in, say, okay, this is the way you're doing it. Go do the project and do something completely different than they said they would do and say, will you approve it anyway? I think that's a bad precedent to set. So can I hear from the owners why they didn't follow the approved plan?
Is Bob Arcieri? Bob, are you on the call? Bob's the owner.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe he sent a letter out. Did you guys receive that letter?
Yep.
Okay, I haven't seen it.
I can speak to some degree about it. Mostly the fact was that the landscapers felt that the grass would continue to fail under the snow loads every year, and by installing stone the way we did with filter fabric, the large stone, and then chinking in the smaller stone, we felt like it was creating a much more stable environment where any sediment that would come from the parking lot would get trapped in all of that, sort of acting as a natural filter. Yet at the same time, allowing the owner not to have to constantly replant grass there after every spring.
Okay.
You know, and that would have been an acceptable design feature, but like Andy said, it's not what you proposed. And there is an issue there. It's unfortunate because the condition that's out there is, you know, it's probably still considered best management practice, but it's not according to the approved plan.
Well, I would think they would have to redo the plan and resubmit it in order for us to be able to approve it, because otherwise, again, we're approving, giving them a certificate of compliance for something that's not in compliance. So they'd have to send us a plan that details these current conditions.
That's right, at a minimum, and then deal with the snow management area and how they're going to handle that.
So what are you saying? They have to reapply for a notice of intent? Is that your suggestion, Stephanie?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is Bob Arcieri speaking. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. I apologize. I've been trying to get in, but for whatever reason, I have a new laptop and it's given me some problems. I apologize. I did. Hopefully, you received a letter that I wrote explaining the reasons why I changed the course of what was submitted originally. And I hope everybody had a chance to read the letter, because it describes specifically both the areas of concern on the left side of the building as well as the riprap out back. This has not been an easy project for many reasons, but quite frankly, you know, the reasons I'm giving are in that letter. And you know, I hope that based on the reasons I've given, you take that into consideration and allow, you know, I think the riprap is a better solution. I understand it wasn't originally on the plan, but unfortunately, I didn't even have a chance to review the plan before it was submitted. And I also didn't understand that the landscaping part of the plan was part, as I wrote in the letter, was part that was needed to be followed through to the exact plan that was submitted. I didn't realize also that during the process, a request would have to be made for a change. So it was not done maliciously, it was done with thought. And I think that what I tried to do is give it a better solution on the riprap based upon the slope in the back and on the left side of the property. it's such a narrow piece that was originally designed to have trees planted that we thought that the trees would be just too much for that narrow strip of land. And we think it looks a lot better the way it was designed in the end.
That's all.
So
well,
with the,
yeah, that's all.
I'm
well
sorry.
and good. That's all well and good, sir. But
Yeah.
you filed a permit application that said you were going to do one thing, and you were asking for a certificate of compliance based on doing something completely different.
Right.
And the engineers that you worked with probably didn't do you a good service by not, explaining to you what the process is here and what you would have to do if you wanted to change things. So again, we're put in the position of you asking for forgiveness instead of asking for permission. From a legal point of view, that's a bad precedent to set if we say, yeah, go ahead, that's fine. You didn't do what we approved, but that's fine. Go ahead and do it. And we'll write you a certificate. From a legal and a regulatory point of view, that's not a precedent that we can set, that I want to set for this Conservation Commission in this town.
Yeah, I'm not trying to set a precedent. I'm trying to ask for flexibility based upon the different elements we had to go through during the time of the pandemic. This project has been 3 years in its making. I've tried to improve the property to the best I can with my personal investment, and it's gone way over budget, and we've made some corrections. We actually added more to the back in costs, but some of the, it looks great on paper, but when you start building out, and the building goes up, and then now you're dealing with the site plan on the finished landscape, it becomes a different animal altogether. And I hope you guys understand that. It's not that we purposely deviated from the plan. It's we tried to do what we could as the project continued into its finish.
If I may. So I believe, I agree with Andy that we can't really provide forgiveness. That's the wrong process. I also understand that there wasn't a malicious intent in the changes, but the process that we sort of legally require being followed wasn't followed. So the question is, how do we go forward? Stephanie had a suggestion, which is basically you resubmit the appropriate materials for what it is that you would like the project to look like, as opposed to what it was that we approved. We have a proper discussion about the merits of those new plans, and we go from there. And I would certainly be interested in hearing whatever hardship this process would impose upon you and your project, if you wish to respond to that.
I'm going to say, as from a timing standpoint, I know Mr. Arcieri is trying to get into the building. That's going to take probably a couple of months to do all that work and get it approved and, get it back to you, get in front of the, I guess the question would be, how soon could he get back in front of a hearing?
Next month.
Next month.
We call special meetings for this sort of thing too. I mean, that's up to the all of the board to want to do that. But
well, Jordan, if I recall correctly, you said that they can occupy the building without a certificate of compliance in place. Is that correct?
That is correct. I mean, the way that Fred has explained it to me, that he can't legally withhold a certificate of occupancy, while the applicant pursues a certificate of compliance. He could do that. I think what I'm hearing is less fixing what was done, and trying to get into compliance with the approved plan. What I'm hearing is submitting an entire new plan and going through a new permitting process. I don't know. We'd have to talk with Fred Leonardo to understand his obligations if that's the intended plan.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I do have a concern about the, said that it appears that they cleared beyond the 30-foot no disturb zone. That's kind of an issue to me. I don't know how you fix that part of it, because that shouldn't have happened. So that part of it to me is still an issue.
So Stephanie, just to be clear, are we talking about that little cutout at the corner, or are we talking about the fact that the whole back of the property extends farther than the original plan said?
I'm not exactly sure, because that's what Jordan had identified as one of the issues, and that I was looking at the plan and I couldn't blow it up big enough to see where he was actually talking about.
There's a little
The as-built.
there's a little triangular section. So picture it this way. There's like a sweeping arc around the back. That sweeping arc is where it's supposed to be. There's one little area where the riprap is, where there was apparently another stake that jogs in about 6 or 8 feet. So you've got a little triangle of space there. It is not the entire back of the property.
Okay,
We
so
looked at the
that,
plan last week. That sweeping arc, I thought we had a discussion, that sweeping arc is not correct.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't appear to be correct based
That's
on.
right.
the
That's
plan.
right.
So
So-
the sweeping arc is not correct. There was supposed to have been a stake about 6 or 8 feet closer to the building in the middle of that arc that would have created a triangle, making the area closer to the building smaller, obviously. So, there's an area I'd say is probably about maybe 50 square feet, 70 square feet, somewhere in that neighborhood of riprap that we'd have to remove and plant some, meadow seed or something, whatever you guys would approve. Like I said earlier, we certainly have no problem doing that if that's what's warranted.
I think the issue, Mr. Amoretti, is that the original plans that were submitted, on those plans, it appeared to us that the entire arc was farther from the building, covered more area than we thought the original plans showed. So I think there may still be some question as to whether or not that area was staked correctly, and it's not just a missing stake.
Okay, well, I suppose we'd have to have WDA come out and restake the original line to be certain.
It would be helpful for us to know, because if we're just talking about that small cutout, that's one thing. But if we're talking about, in fact, that entire area being more extensive than was originally planned, that's probably a slightly different animal in our point of view.
Sure. Well, like I said, we could have WDA come out and restake the original line so that we could be certain of what's incorrect out there. I know for a fact there are still at least 3 stakes, 3 of the original stakes still out there. But I don't think they're in places that are close enough to where we're talking about to really be able to identify it. So certainly we'd have to have WDA come out.
Thank you.
Yeah, so just to follow up, if they are going to reapply an as-built plan, what you show, what's developed out there now, and then compare that to the proposed plan, so we have an idea of how different they are based on a surveyed effort. As I think both of those bits of information should be on the same plan, so we have a better sense of exactly what was done wrong.
I agree. That
do
was
too.
I was having trouble looking at the as-built and not having the original plan in front of me was
Yeah.
hindering my ability to sort that out.
And there's no reason why that can't be done from an engineering standpoint.
Okay, so any other comments from the board? So I guess the first thing that we need from Mr. Arceri and his staff is try to put together a plan that shows what was originally proposed, overlaying with what was done, so we can see exactly where the changes in the limit of work occurred throughout that whole back area. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And the second thing, the consensus I'm hearing from the board is that we should close out this notice of intent and ask them to submit a new one. Or is this something we want to wait on until we see what the differences are? See what the plan is showing the differences.
Well, I don't see why they couldn't submit the notice of intent anyway, so at least they can get the ball rolling on that, and then we can address any issues at that point in time if we feel that the changes were too significant.
Mm-hmm. How do you mean? Well, what if they submit a plan that just shows the as-built and without any remediation of the extension over the no-build zone? I'd like to see that addressed, and I think the first thing I would like to see would be the plan showing what the changes are along the survey changes versus what was supposed to be there. We're seeing that little triangle now, but I'd want to be convinced about what's going on in that whole line myself to make sure that we know where the exact extent of that 30-foot no build zone is versus what was actually built out there. That makes sense?
Yes, it does, Andy. What I'm wondering is, can they submit this material that you just requested without us closing out the current notice of intent? A couple of additional things that I think we'd be interested in at the same time would be the snow removal proposal, since that's come up a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess a little bit of a discussion about why the current covering with the fabric and the riprap is superior to the original proposed vegetated slope. I think if we had those three things, if we could expedite some kind of a conversation to keep their project going as quickly as possible, maybe it's a work session, and out of that, maybe we'll have a way forward.
Mm-hmm.
I endorse that suggestion. I think that I understand that we don't want to reward people for stepping over the line, and that you don't want to create a precedent. But at the same time, I think everybody understands that that we are also trying to facilitate the use of the land that we understood it was going to be used. And we don't have any obligation to do anything more than what the law requires. But at the same time, having approved the project once, I think everybody would like to see it get done. I just think it has to be done the right way. And I think we've made some very reasonable suggestions and meant to move the ball and get it done.
Okay. So Jordan, so an item for you is to talk to Fred about what would happen as far as occupancy, whether that would be permitted if they had to refile the NOI. Okay.
Got it.
And I think what we would like to do, I think it would be good to find a way forward. We would need those details that Gary suggested, which would be looking at the snow removal plan, getting the entire back of the property resurveyed, so we know exactly what the as-built looks like versus what the no-build buffer, the edge of the 30-foot no-touch zone was going to be. We need to look at those details, and also a discussion of how what was actually put there would be superior as far as handling snow removal debris versus what the original plan was. So we'd first like to see that before we go forward. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So that shouldn't be a heavy lift for you guys to get together, put together for us.
Just so I'm clear, while we're doing that, we can continue to pursue the certificate of occupancy, correct?
Yeah, Jordan is going to check on that. Because if in the event we ask you to file a new notice of intent, I'd like to know for certain that this won't prevent you from doing the occupancy.
Okay.
The whole thing, Mr. Amorati, is that you may get the certificate of occupancy, but the fact that the notice of intent isn't closed out is going to be on the is going to be still there at the registry of deeds, and the fact that there's no certificate of compliance can be a impediment to trying to sell the property. So there is an issue there that will need to be closed out eventually.
Understood.
So, okay, so we have a way forward here. I don't think I need to have a motion or a vote at this time, since this is just a discussion. So, okay, so everyone's clear on what's going to happen next?
Work session.
Yep.
Yeah, work session, and George's going to find out about the occupancy issue.
Okay.
We'll get back to you post haste on that.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, I can, Andy, I can follow up by email with Lou and his team, as soon as tomorrow.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, I'm just going back and forth here. Okay, it's after 7:15 p.m. And the discussion now is on 59 Brigham Street, 332-901 plan changes. Who's representing this site?
Hello, this is Steve Herzog calling from Wood Environment and Infrastructure. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Good evening. Yes, we are before the commission this evening because we are seeking your decision essentially on what we should do next. About a year ago, the commission issued an order of conditions for the capping of these two solid waste landfills. And in the interim, in the past year, we have received the final permit from DEP for the solid waste permit, which is called the corrective action design. And there are some minor changes to the actual design of the landfill cap. And the landfills are located partially within wetland buffer zone. So because we have a set of project plans with an order of conditions from the commission, we decided it was appropriate to seek your decision, your judgment as to whether these plan changes for the capping as it pertains to the Wetlands Protection Act in the buffer zone are sufficiently minor that we could simply proceed with them, or whether you would
Okay, you're kind of
just to
breaking up there,
submit
sir.
a request. Okay. Was there anything particular you missed, or should I repeat?
I think you'll have to
summarize
repeat it.
Okay.
Personally.
Sure. Well, we received an order of conditions from the commission 1 year ago, approximately, for capping of these 2 solid waste landfills. And several months ago, we received the corrective action design approval, which is a permit from the Mass DEP for solid waste. And there are some minor changes to the design of the landfill caps compared to what was in the plan set submitted with our notice of intent 1 year ago. So we are here before the commission to ask whether, in your judgment, these plan changes are insignificant, or whether you think they would require us to submit a request for amendment to the order of conditions.
Andy, could you ask him to summarize those changes?
Yeah, I'm looking at the one document that we have, which is the it's from the Department of Environmental Protection. I guess maybe I'm missing any kind of detailed plans here that shows what the changes are. Kind of makes it hard for us to figure out what's going on here.
Okay, yes, we did not submit the full plan. We submitted, essentially, I submitted an email to the conservation agent asking the agent how we should proceed next. But I can summarize those changes for you right here. So for one thing, we reduced the extent of the cap on the north side where adjacent to the railroad tracks, because test pit results show that there is no waste near those railroad tracks. We increased the total cap thickness because we now have 12 inches of sand and 8 inches of topsoil instead of 10 inches of sand. And we added drainage piping within the sand layer and adjusted the stormwater structures to accommodate a culvert that was discovered passing under the CSX railroad tracks. And last, we are including gas venting structures on the landfill caps. So all of these changes will be happening on the 2 landfills, part of which, of both landfills, are within the wetland buffer zone. So there are no changes to the actual area of the work, which none of which is within the wetlands, only within wetland buffer zone. The intent of the project is still the same, to consolidate waste from the perimeter at the edges of the wetlands and cap that waste in these 2 existing landfills and close them properly in accordance with Mass DEP solid waste regulations. So it's just these details of the actual cap construction that have changed.
And were those details approved by DEP?
Yes, they were. Yes, that the DEP was the impetus for those changes. They required those changes to our original design.
Okay.
So it sounds like, if I get you correctly, on the north side, some of the work is actually being pulled back from where it was before?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And it's not being extended anywhere else?
No, it is not.
Okay.
And that's pretty reasonable, I think. You know, if there's no waste out where they expected it there to be, there's no reason to cap it, so you pull back the cap.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just making sure I understand what the changes here, and it's the design of the cap is what you're saying mostly is being changed.
Yes, exactly.
Are the gas vents along the perimeter?
Lies partly within buffer zone.
Steve, are the gas vents
across the area of the landfills?
Say
They're
again?
across the area of the landfills.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, not at the perimeter.
No.
All right. So this is a different situation than we had the previous project. Other questions from the board?
Jordan, you're controlling the diagrams that we're seeing on the screens.
No, Sherry is.
Sherry, for some reason I'm only seeing, I believe, what's the northern.
This is the closest to the center of town, the first landfill, and then this is the second one.
Okay, that's what I was saying. I just wanted to see there are 2 landfills, North is north and south is south.
So yeah, so north is this road.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. I don't have any questions. It doesn't seem to me that it's a substantial change requiring additional action by the commission. I don't see a jurisdictional issue.
Would an amendment cover this so it's properly on file?
Say again, Gary? So,
I'm asking, filing an amendment so that we have the proper documentation on file be sufficient for these changes?
Well, there'll be an as-built submitted to DEP, and we could ask for a copy of that plan. Is that what you're suggesting, Gary?
That would sound reasonable. I just think, we want the proper documentation.
Yeah, there should be. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. If there's going to be a change to the footprint, we'd like to have an accurate depiction of that for the files. Yeah.
So what do we need to do to make that go forward?
well, there were three options for motions on this. One was to accept the proposed changes. One was to require an amended order of conditions. And the third was to require a new notice of intent. And it sounds, unless somebody tells me I'm wrong, it sounds like the best way forward is to accept the proposed changes.
Andy, I would agree with that, but just ask for a copy of the final as-built plans.
Okay, let me set that up here.
Do they have to do that as an amendment or not?
Well, I would say the changes are insignificant since they don't change anything jurisdictionally, but that as a matter of courtesy, we should have we should have.
And that would keep it as option A.
Yeah.
Right. But it's like Gary said, it still would be nice to have an accurate plan.
Yeah.
We do expect to submit an as-built plan as part of the certificate of compliance.
Yep, that's what I'd like
when
to
the
see.
project is finished.
So I guess my question is, what documentation will we have in the file that says that we approve these changes so that when we get an as-built that doesn't match the original submission, there isn't a question about why there's discrepancies?
If I can just interject, if you're all comfortable with this as insignificant, in other words, there's no reason to issue a new order of conditions because there's no reason to issue new conditions, I would suggest that the motions that you're going to make, a copy of these minutes and the newly submitted plan would be sufficient in our file. I don't see that we need to issue a new order of conditions or anything, as long as the record shows through the minutes and through the motions that you accepted the change.
Yep.
Well, I guess the reason I'm a little bit stuck on this, and Jordan, what you said makes perfect sense and sounds like a good way to handle it, but I want to make sure that then that motion identifies each of the changes that were described to us so that is on record, in writing, and in the file.
Okay, I'm just typing this up real quick. Okay, this is how my understanding of how the motion should read. I need a motion to accept the proposed changes to the approved plans for 59 Brigham Street, DEP file number 332-903 per email from Stephen Herzog on August 13th, 2020 as insignificant plan changes. In addition, the revised plan will be submitted to the commission prior to the beginning of work, showing the changes requested by DEP. Does that
Sounds good.
fulfill
your concerns, Gary?
Yeah, I think it does. If we get that plan prior to the beginning of work, it should be good.
Okay. Is that acceptable, Steve?
Yes, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Okay. So, cross this out. Just trying to keep the paperwork straight here. Okay, so I need a motion as I just said.
So
You want me
moved.
to read it again?
No, so moved.
Second, what you said.
Okay, roll call vote. Andy, yes. Tim,
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes,
Justin,
Yes.
Gary.
Yes.
Oops. Jerry,
Yes.
Kelly.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. And just to let you know, the work is scheduled to happen next year. And after it is complete, we will submit a request for certificate of compliance with the as-built plans.
Okay.
So thank you.
Okay, but just to be clear, we want to see the revised plans prior to the beginning of construction.
Okay, certainly.
All right. Okay. All right. It is after 7:20 p.m. The next item on the agenda is 5 Technology Drive site plan application, I guess, changes. So, Dan, Edie, you
Yeah.
have the floor.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks. So 5 Technology Drive is an approximately 14-acre site over in the eastern portion of Westborough, abuts 495. It's an undeveloped site, and there are wetlands and a vernal pool. The vernal pool is on the northern portion of the site, but there are also wetlands to the northeast and south of the site. So previously, the site was issued site plan review approval back in 2001. That site plan review approval is still valid. The site did have an order of conditions, or the project had an order of conditions issued for it back in 2001 as well. That's since expired long ago. An ANRAD was issued in 2016 and extended in 2019. So there is a valid ORAD for the site currently. So what was previously approved was about 103,000 square foot office building with associated parking and utility improvements. Caruth Capital would like to go ahead with the project, understanding they have to file a new order of conditions. And really the main discussion item we want to have, because we don't have to go back through site plan approval with the planning, but now it's with the planning board, because we've got the determination that is still valid, is the applicability of the Westborough bylaws. And under the definition of existing in section 2.4 of the wetlands bylaws, it notes that projects that have site plan review approval are considered existing. So, the biggest issue in terms of the impact on development is the certified vernal pool that's over on the northern half of the site. And I don't know if, Sherry, you have a plan from the past. We have met with the department heads, and Sherry attended that meeting, and Jordan was on vacation that week. And last week I did catch up with both Jordan and Sherry, just in advance of this meeting, just so they knew what we were proposing and what the plan was. Okay. So, and I will note too that Jordan did note that because the wetlands have changed since 2001, the existing order of resource area delineation, if you overlay the previous approval on it, there is wetland fill proposed that was previously approved, and it was approximately 3,700 square feet Now it's a little over 5,000. So we would propose to lose 3 parking spaces to get it back under 5,000 square feet of wetland fill.
Mhm. Yeah, okay, so that's the old plan there, correct?
Yeah, so this is the old plan overlaid with the new wetland delineation that's, was extended in 2019. So the previous one Sherry had up briefly was the old plan. So that's the old plan from back in
okay.
2001.
Okay, because I'm looking at my plan, the title is revised site plan. That's why I'm a little confused.
Right.
Yeah, it was prior to getting its final approval, it was revised with minor changes back in 2001. So this revised site plan is a 2001 site plan.
Okay, fooled me. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
all right. So where is the vernal pool?
so north is to the left on this plan.
Mhm.
So it's right over where Sherry's got the cursor over there.
Okay.
It's right in that area.
Mm-hmm. All right.
I thought it said there were 3. I thought the email we got said there were 3 vernal pools.
Yeah, they are. That I believe is the only vernal pool proximate to the work. I think, Sherry, correct me if I'm wrong. I think the other ones are to the
They're
north.
behind it. I'm going to pull them up so everybody can see.
Okay.
I think the other vernal pools are further to the north in Southborough.
Uh,
That sound right, Dan?
I'm not sure. I thought they were to the north, but not in Southborough. I thought they were in Westborough still.
So they're the red dots.
Yeah.
So they're close to the line.
I think I can put the.
I still get Hannah.
One of them looks like it's right in the stream.
Yeah.
Or actually 2 of them look like they're just about in the stream. I question whether this falls under the definition of existing. To me, that something that happened 19 years ago and was approved 19 years ago, and there's been changes in regulations and all of that since then, and the plan was never put into effect, and it was not, the end notice of intent was actually withdrawn at some point. So to me, this is a whole new ball game. That's my opinion.
Yeah, so there was an order of conditions originally issued back in 2001. I think, and sometime after that, and I think it might have been after Caruth had purchased the property, a notice of intent was filed and then withdrawn. But certainly the original order of conditions is expired.
Okay. Well, you redrew the wetlands, or resurveyed and let me back up a second and get my English together. You reflagged and resurveyed the wetlands line that is now shown on the plan, which is different than what was on the plan, the original site plan approval from 2 decades ago. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And now there's a vernal pool proximate to the site that was not identified 2 decades ago.
That is correct.
Okay. So it would seem to me that conditions on the ground have changed. At least from the Wetlands Protection Act point of view.
Yes, and so we would need to file an order of conditions to build file a notice of intent and receive an order of conditions to build this project. It's just whether, we're meeting the standards of the Wetlands Protection Act and the local bylaw, or just the Wetlands Protection Act. And it's our position that under the term of existing under the bylaw, and I know Mark has some history as to when the bylaw was passed and specific reasons why language was in there, but whether we have to meet the added protections of the bylaw.
Which would make significant changes to your project.
Yeah, given the shape of the lot and the wetland restrictions, I think it's hard to see on this plan, but the 125-foot buffer zone from the vernal pool comes out quite a bit into the site. So it comes into where the actual building is. So across drive aisle and parking and into the proposed footprint of the building.
I don't know. I still feel that these bylaws were made for specific reasons. And to go back 20 years, to me, I don't feel right about it. Saying that that's existing, to me, that doesn't meet the definition of existing.
I have to agree with Stephanie.
Yes, Mark.
Just to provide some history, when the town proposed the new wetland bylaws, I personally went to the meeting and brought this very site up, saying that this new rule would render this site unbuildable. And at the time, the commission agreed with me and other people who had these same concerns, because you had these parks where the roads were put in, the lot lines were developed, and the whole infrastructure put in, and then the town, changed the rules on us. And so we got, as a compromise, because we have other properties that didn't have site plan approval that now fall under the new regulations. But at the time, the commission and the town agreed that any property that had site plan approval, existing site plan approval, would be grandfathered.
Well, can't we handle it in a different manner, and instead of calling it existing? Isn't there a way to grant some type of variance or something? I'm not sure exactly how all that works, but I'm just saying I don't agree with calling this existing and using it that way. I'm not saying I don't want you to be able to build what you want to build. I just think that using if we do some kind of a variance of the bylaw, but I don't know how that works.
Well, if you look at section 2.4 of the regulations, it defines existing as a site. Included in existing is a site that has not been built yet, but has passed site plan approval. So as Mr. Ralt said, that's how our regulations read. So, from that perspective, this is an existing approved plan.
Question to the chair, Andy, does that include situations where there were facts that were not present or unknown to the original people who approved the site plan?
I'm pretty much reading to you what
it says.
Says.
Yeah.
So
I have to think.
I'm just pulling it up right now so I can read it to you.
If somebody's induced to make a mistake in their decision making because they're not given all the facts that are known to the somebody who's got a proposal, does that mean that the site plan that was issued still stands, has legs? I don't know the answer to these things, and I'm not implying that the people who did approve the site plan didn't have the information. But if they did have the information, one wonders why they approved the building that I think even under the state DEP plans would have been infringing on the vernal pool.
But the vernal pool wasn't identified 20 years ago.
Right, and that's the conditions have changed.
That's what I don't know what that means. I just have to think about it. I mean, I agree generally with the way the proponent is constructing the rule, but I'm not sure what it means in terms of this particular parcel and in terms of what we knew or should have known when we did the original order of conditions. And if it's something that couldn't be known because it wasn't known, then I have to look at this differently. I don't know. I can't give from my point of view, I can't vote to give clarification on whether this is existing or not because I have a lot more thinking to do about it.
Yeah. Well, let me just read section 2.4 of the regulations. The term existing as used in the bylaw shall mean lawfully existing in full as of the date the regulations were adopted. This term existing shall include approved site plan reviews permitted under section 1240 of the Westborough zoning bylaws and approved definitive subdivision plans for the construction of roadways and associated utilities, but excluding any individual lot development. So, what we have here is a plan that passed site plan review.
Could you read the last part again? Excluding any individual lot development?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, that's only for definitive subdivisions. If you had a definitive subdivision approval, the protections don't extend to the individual lot developments. It's because you don't get site plan review for a roadway.
I would use in the old Digital Equipment Corporation, or I guess it's now Dell, the big site on the southeast quadrant of 495 where they ended up putting in the large internal road. We had all sorts of issues with it. When they submitted the plan, they ended up through appeals process, they ended up getting the plan approval for the road, but that anything that was decided for the road did not extend to any of the proposed lots that were there. So the proposed lots in that site would fall under the new regulations. Now here, what we're looking at here is a site that passed site plan approval.
Yeah, that's different. I agree.
So
just by way of example, we have 3 lots at in Westborough Office Park that were part of the entire division, but they didn't have site plan approval, lot 1300, 2100, and 2300. And in fact, lot 1300 was converted to parking for 1500, which is also on your agenda for this evening, because we were no longer able to build a building there, that made any sense. So we lost those 3 lots at Westborough Office Park because of the not having site plan approval.
But it's also, again, if the conditions have changed since the original plan was submitted, then I don't see how the original approval could be applicable to this one, because there wasn't any consideration of a vernal pool at that point, and the wetland lines have changed. So to me, it's just different.
What I would contend is that at the time this was approved, and if we all knew that there was a vernal pool there, it still met the town requirements. The town requirements have changed. If let's assume that this entire plan was submitted today with the rules back then, it complies with Westborough rules at the time.
Well, that Mark, that accounts for the vernal pools, but the wetland delineation has changed. right?
Yes.
That is correct.
And
Yeah, and that's, we're not questioning whether we need an order of conditions, right?
Right.
We need an order of conditions to build this project, because even though we have a valid site plan review, we don't have an order of conditions, a valid order of conditions. So again, we would have to come in with a full notice of intent application to be reviewed and approved by the Conservation Commission. It's just
based on the
whether-
2001 conditions, right? Regulations, not the current ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was no local in 2001. So we would basically be under the Wetlands Protection Act. So we're not skirting the Wetlands Protection Act, the DEP requirements for this. So it would be like we were bringing this project back in 2007 before the regulations were updated or the regulations were adopted.
Are the impacts to the vernal pools, shoot the project down, or is it the wetland, or is it both? I mean,
it's more the, well, so within the Westborough Wetlands bylaw, there's buffer zones to the vernal pool, and for the vernal pool, it's 125 feet and it's considered no touch. So if you want to do anything within 125 feet of the vernal pool, you would need a variance from that section of the from that section of the Westborough Wetlands bylaw. In addition to that, for the wetlands as well, I'd have to go back and look. There's no structure and no touch limitations that we would also need a variance for. So, the criteria for getting a variance is a high bar. So, would be a much taller task to permit it as opposed to under the Wetlands Protection Act.
Yeah.
What's in that vernal pool?
I just put up a map just showing the buffers, just so everybody can see.
I know, it'd be nice to see that on his site plan.
I think it's there. It's faint. If you go back, Sherry, to the colored site plan that has the overlay, I think there's 100 and 125 foot shown because the limit of the vernal pool on that southern side, the development side, is coincident with the limit of the wetland. If you look at where, so can you see the 100-foot local?
There's 100. Oh yeah, here it is. Right, I'm following it right.
See, it's dots. Yeah, so that's
Right.
Oh, yeah.
125 foot.
Thank you, yeah.
So
Thanks.
what's in the vernal pool?
You got to,
Hold on, I can pull that up. And I don't know which vernal pool this is.
say, mulch, salamander.
Well, that's not specific enough. What I'm really asking is it a state listed species? There are state listed species in some of the vernal pools in that area. Is this vernal pool one of those?
I don't have that information.
Well, wood frog.
Know that information, because if it's a state listed species, there are regulations beyond ours that they're now subject to.
It says the form says they have not been notified of the presence of rare state listed species in this vernal pool habitat.
That's good.
So that was issued with apparently the pool was certified without having any there being any indicator, or at least have no knowledge of any indicators of rare species.
For what it's worth, if you look at the aerial that Sherry keeps depicting, there's no, natural heritage priority habitat being mapped on that. So that indicates to me, because that's current data, that the state has not identified any state listed species in that area.
Well, does she have that layer clicked?
Yeah.
She does, because it's part of the same layer as the certified vernal pools, the
Okay.
Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program data.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm comfortable with that, Jordan. I mean, the data isn't necessarily, it may be the best that they have, but it's not necessarily complete, particularly in this area. And do we know who certified that pool? Can we get more information about when that was done and what was actually done?
That was on the form. It was on the form that Sherry just showed.
I can forward all those forms to you all, but I'll pull them up as well.
So what's happening with all the runoff on this place? I see a drainage easement. I guess that would be on the east side. So it would be near those vernal pools? Or is it, what's that, where that is? Am I looking at this upside down or what? It's on the opposite side of Technology Drive.
Well, there's
Yeah, there's some of the drainage would tie into the 9 Technology Drive drainage system. And then there was a proposed subsurface basin proposed on the south side of the building.
Yeah, because this is a pretty large impervious area you're talking about constructing. So I would, and especially where it's right near the wetlands and all that, I would want to know some more details about where that's going to go.
Yeah, we would, again, as part of a notice of intent application, we would, provide full stormwater reports, showing compliance with the stormwater handbook. Again, having to meet the DEP requirements for the stormwater out here.
Okay.
but not the local stormwater bylaw.
I don't know if we'd be exempt under the stormwater bylaw or not, Andy.
Because that was adopted about the same time.
Yeah, I'd have to look at the requirements in there, but certainly it's going to be an issue getting recharged on a site like this because the soils are not great out here. They're not conducive to infiltration, but you can certainly mitigate peak rates of runoff and treat the stormwater through proprietary treatment devices.
Like,
so
you're definitely going to need to have a place to put snow too on this.
Well, so the vernal pool was identified in 2001. The site plan approval was done when?
In 2001.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think I can look up, hold on, I think I might be able to. It looks like the public hearing for the order of conditions back then was closed on May 8th. Trying to see if I can see the actual date. It looks like it was, let's see when the order of conditions was issued, but it probably would have been soon after May 9th. So earlier in the year, the permits were obtained, and then the vernal pool was certified. I think the vernal pool was certified not by the landowner at the time. I think it was a college project or something of the sort.
Right.
It was a college project.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just looking at the timing. So when the permits, the original permits and the site plan review was done, the vernal pools had not yet been identified. My honest opinion is that section 2.4 of the bylaw or of the local wetlands regulation does apply here. We have an existing site plan approval. That's my opinion. I don't speak for the board. So this is one of those Solomonic decisions here, but I'd like to get some more. So there's two people on the board right now who feel that this site no longer fits under the definition of an existing, that the site plan approval should not be a deciding factor here any longer. So Stephanie, that's Kelly and Stephanie, you both feel that way. Oh, who else? Gary?
I have questions about it. I understand the way the regulation is written, but, and I also understand that the history that Mark gave, but, you know, it doesn't feel very good, quite frankly, because it's not the intent of the bylaw to be doing what this would be doing, given what we now know. I'm frustrated. Go ahead, Mark.
It actually was the intent. This was added specifically because of this site. It wasn't even a generic, it was because of 5 Tech. I went in there, I personally pleaded our case, and it was accepted. So now we would like to move ahead based on what was agreed to. I mean, we didn't know this at the time either. Even when this amendment was proposed, the wetland, the vernal pool had been delineated years prior to this too, and we were still grandfathered.
Yeah. So I acknowledge that I understood the history that you gave.
Yeah.
It still doesn't feel right to me.
No.
I'm not saying that you're in the wrong. I'm just saying I don't like the way this worked out.
Well, because we're going on your word, which I'm not saying is an issue for me, other than the fact that I would like to see actual documentation of these conversations. I mean, I don't know what was said 20 years ago. And the biggest thing to me is that the site conditions have changed since that point in time. So an approval that was based on site conditions back then is, to me, no longer valid.
Okay, there's two things. We're talking about the adoption of the regulations back in 2010. Okay, and that section 2.4. Now, I'm one of the guys who wrote the regulations, and I'm fuzzy on remembering exactly what happened back then. I'd have to review the meeting minutes that we had when we had the discussions, the public hearings on the regulations. We'd have to go back and look at those minutes to see what was said. Yeah, I'm not doubting you, Mark, but I'd like to look at the written record myself because, you know, my brain is,
I remember.
my brain is a sieve, you know, you know, for what
he's one of the few of us that actually has a memory.
Yeah.
We just asked that you not move the goalpost on us after we purchased the property, you know, and yeah.
And the and board.
You know.
Yes, Justin.
So yeah, Andy, I was there too, and I remember this well. And I agree with you, and I agree with the applicant. And to the members of the board who don't like it, this was put to a town meeting vote. This is what was accepted by the town meeting. And if we don't like it now, we have the option as the board to offer an amendment to it, to change it, and to bring it up at another town meeting. However, the applicant is applying under the bylaws as they're written and as they're allowed to do. And so whether we like it or not, this is what we wrote. This is what we represented based upon the testimony in front of us back in 2010. And their project qualifies based upon, you know, their submittals and based upon their representations. So I don't know what else to say. If I was the applicant, I'd be frustrated too right now if coming before a board with a board saying, well, look, we want to rewrite this because it doesn't feel right.
Well, why didn't you say this 20 minutes ago?
If it doesn't, because you guys have been talking. I mean, I wanted to hear what you had to say. I'm just telling you, Stephanie, that whether this feels right or not, we've had 10 years to change it if you haven't liked it or if anybody on the board hasn't liked it. So let's change it if you don't like it, but it doesn't do anything for what's before us right now. And I would suggest, they're obviously going to have to file an NOI. I think the stormwater regulations will apply, although I'm not sure. And so we'll have a chance to put controls in place that we find appropriate during the NOI process, but it won't be according to our bylaws, because our bylaws were written and brought into consideration thinking it was, and I believe it was the right call, and I still do, that there were lots that were in existence, that it wouldn't be fair to, to create a new bylaw that basically usurped the value of the land. It would be akin to a taking. And so again, that's my quick tour of it.
Okay.
So I agree with you entirely. Legally, I agree with you. But I also agree with Stephanie that when it comes to a decision that is not cut and dry, that it's important to look at the paperwork and just make sure we have our heads wrapped around the paperwork and know exactly what was written. Look at meeting minutes, and I wasn't there, you guys were, but
Yeah, but Kelly, the issue is we have our regulations in writing. Those are cut and dried,
yeah.
you know.
Right, and this was, as long as they had a site plan review under 1240 of the zoning bylaws, they qualify under section 2.4. And so it actually is pretty cut and dry, unless there's an allegation that in 2001, they obtained a site plan review under false pretenses. Now, I don't think anybody's going to figure out, going back 19 years, if there was a false pretense there.
No, I'm
If
sure there wasn't.
Well, right, but if somebody thinks that, because that was, I think, the first point that was brought up maybe by Tim, is what happens if there was a, so, but I think we're going down a ridiculous rabbit hole at that point. I think at this point, we have section 2.4, which defines existing. They've qualified for existing. And I agree, this was put into it as this section 2.4 was put into it as a result of the applicant coming to our hearings, as they were invited to do as a stakeholder in the town, and explaining how this would impact them in their development. And so they had 3 lots that were negatively impacted because they didn't have site plans on them. So this was, we may not like it, but this is what we put in. We may not like it today, but this is what we put in.
And this was the compromise. We didn't want any of our lots to change.
Right. I mean, I remember, but certainly we have the minutes of that. But I don't think there's anything incorrect about the representation here of what went on back in 2010.
Well, thank you for that clarification, Justin. I really wish it came a lot sooner.
Yeah, if you guys are comfortable with that's what happened, like, I'm not comfortable with like just blindly making, I wasn't there. I don't even have the law in front of me to read. So I'm just listening to it.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, this isn't like, the Federalist Papers for the Constitution. I mean, this is what we put in. I do remember the discussion. I don't remember all the details of it, but regardless, we have this in there, and we had it in there for a reason. And I feel that this is what we're working under for this particular situation. So
sure, and the applicant needs to file the NOI. So this isn't the only time we're going to hear this. They're going to file the NOI, and if any abutters want to indicate that this was obtained erroneously, or there's other abutters that disagree, or there's members of the board that disagree when the NOI is open, we can certainly discuss those things. But this doesn't prevent them from filing the NOI. They file the NOI, and then we have, we think we know what rules we're basing it under. And if we change during the NOI application because other evidence comes to light, then that's what happens. But at this point, this is what's in front of us.
So moved.
there's no motion.
I know.
Yeah, so this is a matter of whether, there's no consensus here, or there's nothing we're going to vote on because we don't have anything in front of us to vote on. So it's just a matter of whether they're going to go forward under the old state regulations or under our new, relative or our more recent bylaw and subsequent regulations. And I think the answer here is they move on under the original state regulations based on the way our local regulations are written, specifically section 2.4. So,
I agree.
okay.
Andy, could I make a comment?
Certainly.
I was holding my tongue to allow you all to come to a consensus. Dan had mentioned, and this came out of a discussion that we had between Sherry, myself, and Dan, that they need to reduce the wetland fill to below 5,000 feet because that's the threshold that you can permit through the state act. That requires mitigation. So we had talked a little bit about now that there are vernal pools on site, regardless of whether the local bylaw applies to the project itself, when looking at mitigation, that they might be willing to work around the existing resources that are on the site now. In other words, there might be some flexibility where they can look at that 125 buffer when they're looking to site their mitigation area.
Yeah, so we're certainly amenable to looking at different areas on site. We obviously would want to pick an area where the environmental benefit outweighs any harm by getting to that area or creating a wetland mitigation area. So where it was previously proposed is tight to a couple of vernal pools. So we can look at that. I don't know if Sherry, if you put that plan.
I mean, it's not so much the vernal pool itself, Dan. It's the uplands where the critters spend their time when they're not making new little critters, which is in the vernal pool. So that's my uneducated guess is that the amphibians and various other life forms that use the vernal pool are going to probably be in the throughout that entire upland area is probably where they're going to be living. So, the intent of that was at least to preserve some of that upland area where the critters would be living outside of breeding season. So as far as wetlands mitigation, it's not a matter of creating new wetlands. It's a matter of we're losing the uplands. And, frankly, that's just the way it is, really. Does anybody, that's my opinion there. I don't know how anybody else on the board feels about that.
I think you got that just right. We're not only losing the habitat, we're losing the critters because when they go in and clear that area, they'll basically kill anything that's living there at that time. Yeah.
So anyway, I appreciate it, but really in any mitigation you guys do is certainly going to be welcome, but it's not going to change the fact that in this particular case, the actual habitat, the critters that use this site, they're the ones who are going to die. So, but that's just a matter that's it's irrelevant, but that's what's going to happen. So anyway,
I don't think that's irrelevant. A creature's life is not irrelevant.
It's not relevant to this discussion. It's just, this is what's going to happen.
Right.
Okay. I'm sorry if my choice of words was poor, but that's just basically, we're going to lose them. So.
The site where the building and the parking is located is currently a meadow that gets mowed periodically.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes any difference.
It does.
There are no trees or wetland vegetation or anything, and I think it's about 10 feet or so higher than the vernal pool in the surrounding areas. You can see around the perimeter the elevation change.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty wet.
Those are good points. It does mean that the land mass probably isn't being used in the way that we are concerned about.
Okay. Like I said, it is what it is right now. So yes, there's nothing to vote on here, but the way our regulations are written, you guys can go ahead and file your NOI without consideration of the local regulations or bylaw.
Okay.
Does that, Andy?
Yes.
Does that mean that members of the commission be barred from raising those issues in a hearing on the NOI?
No.
Oh, thank you.
You get to vote yes or no on the NOI.
Then
like anybody else. So,
yes. Okay.
Yeah.
That's all right.
But if
that's all I'm saying. As
Yeah.
I said to begin with, I have to think more about this and I have to consider it. I mean, Justin made a very strong case for why this is under existing. I just need to follow the lines and see how it fills in when I look at the history of the case. That's all. I reserve the right to actually look at what happened in the original site plan review and to consider what was considered. That's all I'm saying. And it's not clear for me. I understand everybody here is thinking and working in good faith, but it's not clear for me that everybody has all the facts, and I certainly don't. So
Right. Agreed.
yeah. So I think you're doing the right thing, and we want this to move along and get a decision for you. But I have to look further into what's happened here.
Yeah. Well, I said the decision is made when an NOI comes before us. When we have an application, then we do our deliberations.
Are we going to have records from that long ago that we can even look at? Yeah.
Sure.
Well, the meeting minutes are in the files. Also, the meeting minutes for the site plan review.
Right. That's what I want to look at.
File. It better
That's
be.
I still wonder about, Andy.
Yeah.
What?
I still wonder about the certification. As I understand it, that certification was done about 19 years ago.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if an updated reevaluation of what's actually in that pool is of interest. I don't believe it's in the interests of the proponent to undertake that. And so I'm curious if we're interested in that information, how that might occur.
Well, the way the regulations are written, if there was a question about if there was a potential vernal pool on the site, it would be, and this was a new application, the site owner would be required to do a vernal pool study. I don't think that in fact, I know that the regulations as written we couldn't demand that they reevaluate the vernal pool. Again, I mean, we could ask them to reevaluate it, and who knows, the vernal pool might not be there anymore, for all I know. But it doesn't change really anything. We just look at this as a wetland, look at this under the state-only regulations. The only question that we have is whether the plan that they're going to, the NOI they submit to us meets state regulations.
So didn't we just agree that at the time the site plan was approved, that the vernal pool wasn't known and that it was certified after that, and therefore this is a new vernal pool relative to their site plan?
But I don't, Jordan or Sherry would have to look at the state regulations to see what the setbacks are for vernal pools under the state regulations. I don't know if there are any, but actually I think it is 100 feet, but I'd have to review the regulations. Actually, I can look that up.
I think it has to do with whether it's there's a habitat abutting the vernal pool.
Yeah.
Mark, do you know the answer?
Well, I don't think it would be a vernal pool if it didn't have a habitat.
Well, I meant where the critters go to live after they have their babies. And also while Andy is doing that, the town regulations came in long after the pool, vernal pool was certified.
Yeah.
9 years later, 10 years later.
Mm-hmm.
I can provide clarification. The Wetlands Protection Act doesn't protect vernal pools in and of themselves. And I'll just read, only if vernal pools and vernal pool habitat are located within another area subject to protection under the Wetlands Protection Act are they protected. So it is the regulations for other wetland resource areas subject to protection that describe the protection afforded to vernal pools and vernal pool habitat. That's under the State Act. Obviously, your bylaw gives further protections.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm very surprised to hear that because I could have sworn that they were regulated under the Wetlands Protection Act. Maybe that's only if they have an NHESP.
I think it's only if they have ESP, and that's why we have the bylaw, because the state doesn't cover it.
Yep. Yeah, what I believe it says, a vernal pool habitat, which includes a buffer of 125 feet around the pool, is presumed significant wildlife habitat when it lies within a wetlands resource area. So the buffer itself isn't a no-build buffer. It's a buffer that means that just that you have to apply for it, just like just the 100-foot buffer zone. The vernal pool has a buffer zone. It's not a no-build buffer zone. So, under the state regulations, I think we're beating a dead horse here at this point.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
When they do, yeah, I have to call time on this because everybody wants to go home. They can submit an application and we can review all this as part of the application deliberations. So
agreed.
Okay. Thank you.
All righty. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right.
Excuse me, should we hang around for the 1300, 1500 parking lot?
That's just we're issuing a certificate of compliance. And if Jordan says the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, I don't see that there's any drama here.
We have an as-built that's been approved by engineering. Sherry did a site visit today and they've complied with the additional requests we made. So I think we're good.
Yeah, that would be later on in the hearing anyway. So yeah, there's no drama here.
Okay. Well, have a good night, everyone.
All right.
You too. Have a good night.
Okay.
Peace out.
It is well after 7:25 p.m. The next item on the agenda is the 338 Turnpike Road Land Use Restoration Plan. Who's here for the owner?
Yeah, I am here on behalf of Vaughn Caprellian. I work down at 338 Turnpike Road, and after speaking with Jordan a little bit, he suggested I come before you guys and have a chat to receive some guidance on the best way to proceed with what we're looking to do here. We are a landscape company, and we entered into a lease with Vaughn, and we are trying to better the property and turn it into more of what it used to be, somewhat of a working farm, and also do things we can do to kind of comply with the wetlands in the best way that we can. We inherited this a little bit as we didn't really know it wasn't a closed out issue. So we got the wetlands resurveyed, and we've just been trying to come up with a plan that we can move forward with, I guess, at this point. we want to do like a mixed use, I guess, of plants for kind of, oh, that's the original plan there. Kind of within the 100-foot buffered zone of plants that we can use for, that will be left in the ground and can be used for cutting and retail sale, cutting without like disturbing the ground, and then also some agricultural use. There is some existing, and then also some space for plants to be kind of in the ground nursery stock that can be dug upon maturity. So kind of did this rough layout kind of showing the different zones that we would hope to be using the site for.
Okay, so.
How dare you build gardens?
So this plan shows the wetlands is currently delineated.
Yep.
And does not show where we had originally put in an enforcement order to restore the wetlands that used to be there.
So we do have that original plan. I think Sherry had it up a second ago. It kind of shows the area that we have in pink right now is kind of the area that you guys had in green as far as the restoration zone. So our plan in this pink zone, all of this orange kind of garden is existing seasonal garden and existing established blueberry patches that are kind of in place, which on the original plan are shown in kind of this green color, the lighter green. And then the darker green is kind of the area in pink. And that's where we would want to do a bunch of winterberry and dogwood, things that could be planted and minimally maintained until they reached a point of maturity at which we could leave them to grow and then go into that area to take cuttings for sale for like winter florists and other things.
Can I get some comments from the board?
I'm not familiar with the treatment of this agricultural use on the land, and I'd like some direction from Jordan if we could. The cutting, I mean, I've seen in many places in wetland areas, and I don't know if it was a pre-existing use or not, but there's the idea of growing winterberry and dogwood for florists has been around for a while. But I don't know if that is consistent with wetlands bylaws and wetlands regulations as an agricultural use that can take place in wetlands or not. Could you expand on that?
Jordan?
Me?
Jordan. No, Jordan, or
I mean, I'm not an expert. The Wetlands Protection Act does have exemptions for agricultural uses, obviously, and this type of enterprise, commercial horticultural enterprise, is included in those exemptions. It has to be existing, Tim. So, you know, I've been on the site multiple times to both check their wetland delineation and just to see the operation that they're currently running. And the way that I look at the restoration plan that you approved and, you know, wished to be implemented back in 2007, I believe, the plan that's on the left side of the screen, those green areas were intended to be renaturalized, to be vegetated areas to protect the wetland buffer. And, you know, the winterberry and high bush blueberry areas that Brittany is describing, I think, you know, could work with that initial plan. It really depends on how they propose to manage those.
Correct. Yeah. Okay.
Those areas. So I can't say from a legal standpoint. I know the Wetlands Protection Act does allow for this type of activity, but I think it all hinges on whether it's existing. And then the question is, just moving forward, if you sort of approve this plan, what's the best way to approve it? Is it through an NOI? Is it through an RDA? What way can we record what you said is allowable on the site and whether there are any conditions related to how they manage the site? That's sort of what I want to see, is what's the best kind of permitting mechanism to do this.
If I can interject here, when I discussed this with Jordan last week, we thought that if they submitted a request for determination of applicability, which would include, okay, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to manage it, this is the way things are going to work in perpetuity, what we would do is grant a negative determination, but we would do something which is not usual for an RDA, which would be to make it part of the property records with the registry of deeds. So it's attached to the property in perpetuity. Like, this is how it will be used. This is how it will be managed. So that is a way for us to go on this particular piece of property, to make sure that at least we have legal authority to go in to say, hey, you're not doing what you said you do, and we have this plan recorded and we have this process recorded. You need to go in, you need to fix it. It also would give us the legal authority to go in and inspect on a periodic basis to make sure that they're meeting their obligations according to what was in the RDA decision.
I think that's a good solution. And did we ever address the issue of how the proponent being a leaseor affects how we can bind other people, and the owner in fee would be bound by the RDA even though they weren't signatory to it? Just thinking, is that an issue or not an issue?
I would think it would be an issue, especially if it's going to go on the deed as a deed restriction.
Not going to be a deed restriction, I don't think. I don't think they're saying that, Stephanie. As I understand it, they're saying this would be recorded along with the fact that an RDA was issued. But that's not a deed restriction, I don't think. Again, that's just a quibble. I'm not going to quibble about it. I just want to know if what we're doing, Mr. Caprillion still owns the property, and whether we are doing something which he's going to have to comply with in the future. Because there have been questions about how his compliance on that property, and if this business fails, what happens to the plans that's on the land?
Would this be restricted to the current lessee?
Yeah.
Well, the question is, as I recall the discussion we had when they were here last year, there was a question about whether they could get power of attorney, or there'd be some kind of written agreement that they were acting on his behalf. And I mean, I don't think those, actually, I know those discussions were never finalized, but that would be the issue here, whether anything that we provided, anything we decided upon would be legally binding from here on in.
Is there an existing order of conditions on this? Refresh my memory that we found that they're violating. Is that what's happening?
This is from an enforcement order.
Okay, but there's an existing order of conditions, isn't there? I mean, I just did a quick, like on my phone, I just did a really quick deed search. It looks like there's some sort of order from like 2005.
Let me pull it up.
My point is that if there's an order of conditions, then we would have them apply for a modification of the order of conditions, and then it's stuck with the land in perpetuity.
Mm-hmm.
I guess
that sounds right.
Why this needs to be in perpetuity? Why it can't be just to the current business that's operating there.
It doesn't this doesn't run to the person, it runs to the land.
Right. So Justin, how does that work where you have a tenant and you have an owner and you're doing something to that's on the deed? To
Well,
me, working for
the owner signs off on the application, and so the owner and anybody forward on the land. I mean, it's just like any other tenant that pulls a building permit.
Yeah.
You know, the owner has to sign off on it with his or her permission, and then it runs with the land. You don't tie things just to the tenant.
Okay.
Oh, I am. Yes, I have an existing order of conditions on it.
Okay, so I guess I would
734.
review that, right? And then we have options. Andy, actually, I emailed you something about an hour ago, and you're probably aware of this, but the mechanism for modifying an order of conditions. You have to, you know, there's a public hearing and a notice to the abutters, and, you know, then we decide on whether we modify it or not. And if we feel that the modification is so different than the original order, we can tell them they have to apply for a new NOI. Otherwise, we can modify the prior order.
Well, I can't say that I knew about this. So, but this is good information we can use going forward, not on this site, but also on 85 East Main.
Yeah, that's actually why I sent it to you, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now, the existing order was from 2005.
Oh, I'll pull it back up. Oh, jeez. That's what I get for going too fast. Yes, it was filed in 2005. It was issued in May.
Oh, it was the Restoration and Agricultural Area Plan. So the restoration plan that is shown on the I'll call it the left-hand picture there, is what was approved and either was never done or was destroyed.
The file has some language or memos back and forth saying that the plants were bought and installed because they were pricey or something along those lines. But I don't know. I wasn't here, so I'm not sure what happened after that.
Yeah, I think the field got mowed repeatedly after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the enforcement order was due to a violation of the original order of conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Correct, Sherry?
Yes, it was.
And I don't know that the restoration that was required as part of that initial enforcement order was ever done. I think that, you know, whatever 13 years later is still outstanding.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would just go back to the original NOI. I mean, it's 13 years later. The other restoration order, that's all well and good, but as a board, we can go back to the original NOI and revisit what we want them to do with it now without regard, you know, or with regard to what they were supposed to do in the interim if we want to do that. But we have the flexibility of going all the way back and looking at it, and that's probably the right way to do it.
I can scan all of that and send it to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I endorse that. I think that's a moderate way to deal with this and tie it back to something which is enforceable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's my primary concern. And if we do that by considering a modification or an amendment to the original order of conditions, what I see on the map proposed by the proponent, I would be very, very have to look into it a little bit more and look at what best practices is in maintaining it. As I don't see this as blueberries, by the way, I see this as being marked as winterberry and dogwood, which are cutting. Those are materials which are cut every periodically in order to satisfy florists who need that particular structure for designing stuff. And I would have to look a little bit harder at how that's going to be done. But as I say, I've seen examples of it where it works very well in a wetlands environment.
Mm-hmm. So
particularly if you're observing the buffer along the eastern creek there.
Yeah. So we'd have to look, it's basically the biggest thing is the management of the land.
All right.
Where the winterberry and dogwood would be growing and be periodically cut. You know, what are they doing? We don't want to see that mowed anymore.
Right.
We want to see the habitat get slowly restored. So, you know, these are the things we have to work out in going forward. So I don't have an answer for that yet. But once we review everything, we can make recommendations.
Okay, yeah, we submitted a little bbit of a in writing, kind of roughly how we might maintain some of those areas, just from a thought standpoint, because all of the plants would need a little bit of maintenance in the beginning in order to develop without being overtaken. You know, if we were to plant 500 plants in that area and we didn't maintain around them a little bit, it would be really hard. And I think a large portion of them would end up getting kind of lost to the environment before they're allowed to grow to a point where the field didn't overtake them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, what happened was there might have been restoration done, but that's then you or someone in the past went in there and just started cutting everything. And any kind of restoration that had been done, if it had been done, was completely lost.
Sure.
So,
And that.
Yeah, it's a matter of coming up with a way to start to allow wetland species to start inhabiting that area and allow you to use the land in a profitable manner. So I don't have the answer for that.
Sure.
I'm not a plant person. Gary is. So.
Yeah, I mean, we're just trying to do the right thing. I mean, it was once historically a farm, trying to bring a little bit of that back. You know, we entered into a lease, I think it's maybe 20 years. I don't know exactly. And we just want to make the property better and clean it up and kind of make it usable and nice for the town as well.
What's the typical pruning regime once everything is established? How much do you cut the plants back? Is it 10%, 20%?
A lot of it depends on how good of a year it was for the plant and how mature the plant is. For like a winterberry, you know, you might take it back 50%, depending on the year and how it does. The next year you might not get as much out of it, or you might skip that year with that plant. So a lot of it is seasonally determined. It's done, you know, we do it in the winter, late fall, because that's when the sale for that kind of item is the best. But a lot of it, like I said, depends, you know, year to year on how wet or dry the season was and how much that plant produced and what's worth cutting, really.
So I guess I see additional discussion about that because our interests in these buffer zones are as habitat, not so much as profit centers. And what you're describing sounds more severe to me than I would like to see for habitat management, while allowing for some business interest as well.
Can I make a suggestion? Gary, if you go over to the Green Thumb, the property immediately to the west of their Green Thumb nurseries, there's a swag in the land there, and they maintain that for winterberries. And I think if you look at that, you can see it's possible to have actually pretty heavy cuttings and still maintain a natural looking plant, which can be a habitat for birds, bird species, bird nesting, and other kinds of uses. There's very little that goes on, in my understanding of this whole culture, that would be disturbing to animals during their nesting season, which is when they would mostly be in that area. So otherwise, it's left alone.
Yeah, so I don't entirely agree, Tim. I am familiar with the area. I do agree that from that perspective, you are correct, but those plants are winter forage as well. And that's not the nesting season when they're used. It's late, in fact, late winter forage when other things aren't available. I mean, I don't necessarily know the answer. And we're talking about a small area, but what I am talking about is the purpose for the buffer zone, business interests notwithstanding. The purpose was not just for visual stuff, it really was for year-round habitat. So I'd like to see if there's a balance that can be struck there. A future discussion.
Mm-hmm. So where things stand right now, so go back, the board will be sent original copies of the NOI, the enforcement order. We'll take a look at the plan that Brittany has put together, and we will determine whether, and also looking at what Justin sent, which is Wetlands Program Policy 85-4 amended orders and conditions, what we can do around that to make suggestions to the property owner and the lessee about a way to move forward with everyone's input and Jordan's expertise. So that sound like a plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Andy, it might be helpful, and I don't know if this is possible with social distancing, for the commissioners to get out on the site and take a look while, the growing season is still going on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have obviously a filing deadline of October 1st for October 13th. I don't know how quickly this will move. And it might be something that's permitted in the winter. But if the commission wants to understand what they're doing now and what the site looks like, I would recommend getting out there before, the growing season's over.
Yeah. Well, I don't see a reason why we can't do a site visit and stand 6 feet away from each other. I mean, we did it out on Belknap, so just avoiding poison ivy if there's any. Do you have any poison ivy in that site?
You'll be all right.
Okay. There's a lot of Belknap Street. So, okay. Well, why we can plan a site visit. I mean, during business hours, we'll just let you know when we're all going to show up. We can do that via email among the commission members.
Okay.
And decide when we can make a trip out there.
Okay.
So we'll let you know prior to when we show up.
Okay.
Okay, folks, we good?
We good.
Okay. Thank you for your patience, Brittany.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night. Okay. Next on the agenda. All right. Okay, other business and pending matters. Acceptance of the deed for parcel A at 140 South Street. So that's the Kendall Homes development, the two homes, the old Blueberry Lady property. So, Jordan?
Actually, it should read parcel B. That was a clerical error on my part. Andy, the motion language you have there was given to me by town council.
Okay.
The Board of Selectmen, just earlier today, I was at their meeting, voted to accept both parcels A and B. Sherry, I don't know if you can display the updated plan for the property. This will be before the planning board on September 15th for their approval. Basically, the original proposal was to gift to the commission the entire remaining land of 140 South Street, which it was something like 28 acres. And in the process of reviewing all the documentation with our town council, we discovered that there was an existing sewer easement over that parcel. And if the land went into Article 97, it would terminate that sewer easement. Sherry, if you could zoom in just on the parcel A there so that they can see what this looks like. So parcel B is what you're tonight going to be voting to accept, and that will go to Article 97 as permanently protected open space. The select board voted tonight to accept parcel A. If you can zoom in on that, that basically follows what was the existing sewer easement, but it's now carved out as a separate parcel that will be under the care and custody of the Board of Selectmen. The other change that was made on lot 2, if you can zoom in on that, Sherry, just to where the sewer easement terminates on South Street there. The original language did not provide for any public access, so the owner, Kendall Holmes, agreed to include public access. So in the event that the commission wishes to put a trail on the property or provide public access, we'll have the ability to do so via the existing sewer easement.
I think when Derek and I visited the site a few years ago, before all the building was done, that was kind of what our thinking was. I think there's actually an old sign out there that used to be right on the street, you know,
right,
for blueberries, you know, for sale
Sure,
here.
sure. So there's really little difference now between what you're looking at now, what the original A&R was, except that the sewer easement is now carved out as its own independent parcel. So the Board of Selectmen again voted tonight to accept both parcels, and you tonight need to vote to accept just parcel B. These deeds have to be signed in person, and now that Town Hall is open for business and allowing the public in, the deeds starting tomorrow will be available at the town clerk's office, and so you'll actually have to go in, each of you, obviously with masks, and sign in person. What else can I say? Planning Board will accept the or approve this updated plan on September 15th, and then the seller's attorney is going to record both deeds and the recorded plan for us. And then we will own this 27.5 acre parcel of land.
Okay, but so we have to really get in there and get this signed as soon as possible.
Yes, if you know, as soon as you are able, starting tomorrow. I believe the public is allowed into the building between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. So, I mean, at least, you know, tomorrow's Wednesday, at least maybe by the end of the week, if you all can get in there and put your wedding signature on the document, that would be great.
All right. Okay, anything from the board?
Nope.
Okay, hearing nothing, I need a motion to accept pursuant to the provisions of General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 8C, for conservation and passive recreation purposes, the parcel of land located off 140 South Street from Kendall Homes Incorporated, and to sign an acceptance of deed and any other documents, and to take such actions as may be necessary or appropriate to acquire the foregoing property.
So moved.
Second,
Is that Stephanie?
that was Stephanie, yes.
And roll call vote. Oops, hold on. Come on. Okay, Andy, yes. Tim,
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Justin,
Yes.
having a little problem here with my mouse. Gary.
That was Gary?
Gary? Nod your head. Okay. Gary nodded his head. Jerry.
You had to push that button.
Kelly.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Okay. All right. The next item is order of conditions for 332, order of conditions DEP file number 332-911, Kenneth Marvold, 57 Brigham Street, which was the plan we saw before at the beginning of the hearing. So this is where they're modifying the parking lot so they can use the loading docks. Okay. So I need a motion to issue an order of conditions for 57 Brigham Street, map 21, parcel 209, DEP file number 332-901 with special conditions 21 to 45.
So moved.
Okay, that was easy.
Second. It was Kelly's turn, so she can have it.
I hope no one ever
I
watches.
did hesitate.
Boy, I hope no one ever watches these things. Okay.
You never say that on camera.
Oh, Kelly and I just have this thing, you know.
Yeah, okay. Roll call vote. Andy, yes. Tim,
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Justin,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Jerry,
Yes.
Kelly.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. All right. Next item. Okay, it's a issue of certificate of compliance for 332901 1500 West Park Drive and 332877-2 Fay Mountain Drive. Well, we'll first deal with 1500 West Park Drive. That's the parking lot over at, well, West Park Drive that they just put in. So, okay, get to the right place there. Okay, so I need a motion to issue a full certificates of compliance for DEP file number 332-901, order of conditions book page 61137/page 229, located at 1500 and 1300 West Park Drive for the new parking lot, which Jordan, you said you and Sherry have inspected.
Looks good.
Okay,
So
so
moved.
who did that, Tim?
Yeah.
Okay. Second,
Second.
okay, roll call. Andy, yes. Tim,
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Justin,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Jerry,
Yes.
Kelly.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Okay, and the next one is 2 Fay Mountain Road. So this was a single home development, correct?
It's a single family home, no ongoing order of conditions. The as-built was approved by reviewed and approved by our engineering department. Sherry and I conducted a site visit. I did issue a memo indicating that the owner should keep on top of some Japanese knotweed on the periphery of the property. It's not included in the conditions. I mean, it's not something that you can that will sort of stay on the or exist beyond the certificate. It'll really be up to the owner whether they want to comply with that request that I made independent of this order. So there's no outstanding issues. Everything looks good.
Okay. I need a motion to issue a full certificate of compliance for DEP file number 332-877, located at 2 Fay Mountain Road.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote. Andy, yes. Tim,
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Justin,
Yep.
Gary,
Yes.
Jerry,
Yes.
Kelly.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. And next item is vote to issue a denial for 332-910 Mass DOT I-90, I-495 interchange improvements. So everybody, I hope, had a chance to review the denial document that Jordan wrote. Anybody have any questions about that?
I think that's probably the one document that I didn't get to see today. What's oh, wait a minute. No, that's the one that we talked about last meeting.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. No, I did see that one.
Okay. All right.
Sorry.
So hearing nothing more from the board, I need a motion to issue a denial with findings and comments for the I-495, I-90 interchange redevelopment project, DEP file number 332910.
So moved with prejudice,
But not extreme prejudice. Okay.
not extreme prejudice.
Second.
Second. Was it my turn?
Okay. Roll call. Andy. Yes. Tim.
Yes.
Stephanie.
Yes.
Justin.
Yes.
Gary.
Yes.
Jerry.
Yes.
Kelly.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Next item. Land management options for 31-33 Eli Whitney Street. So Jordan, I take it that's your item.
Thank you. Christy Williams, our town manager, asked that I discuss this with you. A suggestion has been made that the Sudbury Valley trustees potentially purchase a conservation restriction for the 31-33 Eli Whitney property, the Daypray property, sort of as a creative way to fund the acquisition. And I spoke with Steve Sloan, who's on the board of the Sudbury Valley trustees. He's having the same discussion with his land protection subcommittee tomorrow that I'm having with you right now. The question is, Sudbury Valley trustees does do this from time to time, do what they call a local assist, provide funding to a municipality for a purchase of open space and in exchange get a conservation restriction. Now, I've indicated to Steve, and Christy knows this, that the Westborough Conservation Commission is interested in taking a more active role in the management of its own conservation land. So my question to Steve was, if the Sudbury Valley trustees were to obtain a conservation restriction on this parcel, sort of what requirements would they have, or what would they envision for their role managing the property, if any? In other words, if they got a CR on this property, would they expect that this then became part of their portfolio? Or would they just want, let's say, acknowledgement on some signage that they helped fund the property? Or would they just want to be involved in discussions on how we intend to manage the land? So Steve's committee is meeting tomorrow. So I just wanted to gauge your feelings, if you have any strong objections or maybe ambivalence, or sort of just how you feel about Sudbury Valley trustees getting involved through a conservation restriction, and just what your thoughts are, what your expectations would be. I'll give you the floor.
Personally, I think having somebody else being involved in a project like that is a welcome thing. I mean, if they have the resources to contribute, I think that we could have a partnership with them, if we lay out some guidelines or whatever. I'm all for having more people on board helping out with conserving these lands and protecting them, taking care of them, maintaining them, all of that.
As a side note, and I know that Westborough does not participate in the Community Preservation Act, but for communities that do, when they use those funds for land acquisition, it's required that a third-party organization hold a CR. It's just an extra level of protection. The plan for the Daypray property is that the Conservation Commission would have care and custody through, under Article 97. And this would be just one additional level of protection. So in addition to obviously having them involved, and that's really what I want to hear from you guys.
Plus we get money. Town gets money.
Plus we get some financial assistance.
Yeah, I think it's a win-win. Win-win having them involved.
I support the selling a conservation restriction to them. I think it's a great idea. I think it's, I would recommend it for every conserved piece of property in the town. I think that we do need a backup, and we need a backup that is insulated from town politics and from local development beyond the lives of the people who are on this board right now. And I think that the Sudbury Valley Trustees is a nonprofit organization that has legs. They've been around. They've been tested. I think they're would be a good partner in a lot of ways, and I support it. As I say, I think we should invite them to the Belknap's property and other properties in town, and ask them if they would be interested in, even for a nominal sum, buying a conservation restriction, as long as it's clear that the primary stewards for the property is the Conservation Commission.
Yeah.
I support it.
Well, anything else? All right. Table that one and see what comes up from, what proposals come up from Sudbury Valley.
I'll relay your thoughts. I don't know that, they haven't agreed to anything yet.
Right.
And, I don't know what their ability to fund or get involved in this purchase is anyway, but they are interested. And so it's good to hear that we are as well.
Okay, the next item are the meeting minutes for the August hearing. Does anybody have any comments, suggestions, or changes?
I did not.
I only have one. In the hearing for the RDA for Keolis Commuter Services, there's a sentence that reads, Member Kenningsburg and Member Kessler commented that the maps provided were inefficient for the Conservation Commission to confirm wetlands resources. I'm pretty sure the word should have been insufficient. If we can just fix that one.
Missed that one.
I mean, yeah, inefficient probably works too, but I'd like the insufficient.
It's really bad when you say the opposite of what you really mean.
So with that, I'll sign these and get the signature page over to Sherry. Okay, and last but not least, Conservation Director updates.
I will be as concise as I can.
Please do. My butt's getting sore.
I got you. Just as a side note, we received communication from the MACC today asking for comment or experiences about dealing with the MBTA and Keolis.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I just wanted to share this sort of anecdote. I responded by email, and then I received a follow-up from MACC's executive director, Dottie McGlinty, who indicated to me that she had just got off the phone with Andy Koenigsberg, and we had both said the same exact thing. At least we have our story straight.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
But so just a few things. 50 Otis Street. This is the property where we've had some stormwater compliance issues. They are going to move forward with maintaining the existing detention basin. And as a trade, they have agreed to enlarge the proposed, recharge infiltration system on the site. So they proposed the plan. Our engineering department, Lisa Elaine and her staff, approved that change. The reason that they needed to do that is because they originally proposed to do some excavation of the existing detention basin on site, and they took the credit for that additional storage as part of their whole stormwater drainage, or their stormwater management report. And so they needed to make up that additional storage by adding basically another row on this subgrade recharge system. And for our purposes, it just means that they're going to go ahead and maintain that existing detention basin, but they're not going to do any excavation because they don't need to. It's going to be much less impactful. It's more in line with what the commission would traditionally approve as maintenance and not as something more than that. So they're going to do the work on the detention basin in September. And of course, they are going to have to deploy erosion and sedimentation control. Sherry and I will absolutely have an opportunity to do a pre-construction site visit. And we'll keep you updated on that project. I put in the Dropbox basically a request or a description for a program that the Cub Scout Pack 100 is doing this fall, where they're going to place little geocache boxes out on some trails around town, so that their Cub Scouts can do geocaching, but do it in a socially distanced and safe way. There were only a few locations that they were proposing on municipal town land. I gave her the approval, but I asked that she just write up a summary and indicate to you where they would be, mostly so that if you were out hiking and you saw them, that you would know that they at least ran that by Sherry and I.
What's it called? Geocaching?
Yeah. Geocaching. So the pack leaders will drop those boxes along trails. They're going to put them a little off trail, but I indicated that not anywhere within sensitive areas. And then they'll be geotagged, so then their Cub Scouts will go with GPS devices and be able to locate them. It's just a fun,
so it's like a treasure hunt.
Correct.
You've never heard of geocaching?
No, I never heard of that.
Really?
Oh yeah, that's like an obsession for people.
Really?
There's geocaches all over the world.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Machu Picchu to the halls of Montezuma.
That sounds like it could be very, very expensive.
No, it's cheap.
No.
There are whole communities that do this. And go ahead, sorry.
No, it said people do it as a hobby.
Yeah. But the ethos
like
is
metal
that you always,
detecting.
the ethos is you always get permission from the landowner, so that's what they've done. So no big deal. I'm just updating you in case you see it. The boxes are labeled that they will be removed by November 2020 and that they have permission from both the WCLT and the Westborough Concom. I am working on a work plan and a set of goals for our department. I've met with Sherry and Andy to kind of look at a first draft. My plan is for the October 13th meeting to present you with a plan and goals for the following fiscal year. And I hope to get to a point where then we can look at the next 3 to 5 fiscal years. And that'll help us with budgeting, but also with prioritizing the land management stewardship work I'd like to bring to the department, but also looking at what we need to do in terms of the efficiencies of our office, et cetera. So a draft will be coming your way between now and the next meeting. And then on that agenda will be a discussion of our work plan and goals for our department. And then a final point, I have a phone call set up with a consultant from Woodard and Curran next week to talk about the lake management and watershed management plan that they did for the city of Newton and Crystal Lake. And the watershed study that they had done was in response to sort of seasonal and perennial algal blooms, which is the problem that we have at Lake Chauncey here in Westborough. So I'm going to talk with her and understand exactly what services they provided to Newton, what it cost. I did provide you all with a link to the City of Newton's website where you can actually look at a very concise PowerPoint the study itself, but then a very concise PowerPoint that kind of breaks down what they did, what they looked at, what they studied, and what they recommended. So at our next meeting on October 13th, I will report back what I learned, and we can go from there. It's not necessarily going to be a project of the Conservation Commission to do this and find funding for it and determine what exactly we want to do, but I have been asked to kind of lead the charge on behalf of the Recreation Department and the Board of Health. And so I'll present my findings to you and get some feedback from you on how we might move forward with that. I think that's it. Sherry?
I'll be quick as I can too. So the state hospital, the ground penetrating radar project that we had last year, I don't know if you remember, John Mayer had come in front of us and they cleared out some trees and they were looking for the cemetery with the proposed grave sites. They want to start that back up because of COVID-19. They didn't actually get out there to do it. So they're going to go and hand clear the vegetation again, not necessarily the big trees, but the littler stuff, put it up on the side, and DPW is going to help them take it away. And then hopefully they'll be able to get back out there and actually use the machine in the next few weeks or so, and actually locate something. So you may see that if you're up at the state hospital. You all were sent an email from Sophia, I'm going to butcher her last name, Arano, about the Worcester Lawns for Climate Restoration. I don't know if any of you want to take part in that, but it's basically each of you could do it individually, or you could do it collectively, as pledging that you won't use fertilizers or hazardous herbicides on your pesticides on their lawns. We didn't put her on the agenda, but if that's something that you want her to come and give a presentation or explain it to you more, we want to just bring it up and just ask if that's something you're all interested in, or if you want to do it separately. We weren't really sure.
That sounds like something that would be good to do it in like an environmental expo. We're talking about environmental expos on a bunch of these other work group things that I'm on, and something that you might want to include in something like that to educate the public. I mean, obviously, I'm an environmental scientist and have been for over 30 years, so I don't use that kind of stuff. I'm very, very particular, and I'm sure everybody else is here. But it's the general public really that needs to be educated on the use of herbicides and what it does to our waterways and everything else. So that to me sounds like something that's more of a public outreach agenda item.
I could forward her to the Westborough TV and see if they would run some for things.
Something like that, yeah.
That'd be a better outsource for her. Okay. So then the three ongoing kind of issues I have so far with stormwater to follow up, 25 Bridle Lane, I had explained to you, and I showed you some pictures last time of how the sheet flow had dumped in. I met with Laura on site. We discussed it. She wants to get a plan together of what to do before she comes before the commission to present how she's going to go about it and get some insight from you all. So she's meeting with a couple different contractors, and she's looking to come in front of us in October. She did put up some erosion control and some silt fence. It's not awesome, but it's a start. So I'll reach back out to her before October and make sure that she's ready to come for October. Hopefully she'll have met with enough contractors and gotten an envision of what she wants to do out there. 160 and 180 Milk Street, which is the Ocean State job lot. When I was out there a couple of years ago, I found a sinkhole in the corner, abuts a property for the town that goes into the sewer treatment plant. That sinkhole has gotten significant. It's almost car size at the moment. So they're looking into how it's getting on site, what's causing it. I think it's coming off from sheet flow from Route 9 when they resurfaced it a couple of years ago. DPW is involved now, the engineering department. So if you go out there and see that, that's what's going on with that.
Didn't Derek just have them all? Because I remember it was like Bernie and Phil's, Coca-Cola, all of them. He had them all get involved in redoing that whole sewer project, that whole stormwater drainage line.
That's like quarter mile the other direction.
Oh, all right. Okay. Sorry.
This is at 135 and Route 9.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So at this point, it's kind of not us anymore in stormwater because it's kind of bigger than us. But if they have to come in front of us for an RDA or an NRY to fix this problem, you'll see it at that point. And my last update is Smith Valley Parkway. So 40 Smith Valley Parkway, I went through all my old emails and pulled the old files, and I came up with a timeline of events that from 2015 forward, as how many times I've had conversations or site visits or how many times we've done projects on the site. And I've given it to Jordan and he's started to look over it, but we're gonna have more discussions about it and then go towards bringing it to Clary. Jordan, do you want to bring it to Clary first, or are we gonna bring it back to the commission?
My thought was, well, let me review it, and then I may seek guidance from our circuit rider at DEP, Kim Roth, just to see what the best move or the best way forward, considering it's the MBTA, but also considering there's lots of discussions now over the way that the MBTA and Keolis manages its properties. So I just want to get a little guidance from DEP first before bringing the MBTA back before you on that specific issue.
Yeah, pertinent to that, when I was talking to Dot McLincy at MAC today, I told her one of these issues we had was trying to get compliance to MBTA, and she gave me a contact, Clary Kotu.
Yeah.
Is that who you've been talking to?
Yeah.
All my emails are from her. Yeah. And
Okay.
so when you read the timeline, you'll see that it's just back and forth. I bring it to her. She takes a couple months to go over it, possibly meets me on site. We might fix one of the issues, and then the following year it gets destroyed again, and we have to go back to the same thing. And when it comes to the snow plowing, I actually did find several emails and plans from them saying to put up signs, to put up boulders so they wouldn't move the snow there. And obviously none of that's getting done.
Okay, well, I'll reply to her with your observations. Oh, by the way. Okay.
So that's quickly all I have.
All right. If there's nothing else from anybody, I need a motion to
I have
adjourn.
something that I want to bring up.
Oh, go ahead, Gary.
So the earlier discussion about the grandfathering, I guess I'd like to queue up a conversation for us about sunsetting that. It's been 20 years for that, which seems like an exorbitant amount of time to carry this in books to me. So a possibility in preparation for a conversation about whether or not we want to basically sunset that clause would be how many additional properties are there in town where this might come up again? There are very few, makes it easier to sunset. If there are a bunch of them, we might need to think about it a little differently.
Yeah, I agree. I thought of that earlier when we were talking about it. It's like how many properties like this can come up 20 years later and say, oh, we want to be grandfathered in into something that happened 20 years ago.
Okay, well, one thing, a project that is going to be on the goals for Jordan and Sherry is there's a bunch of revisions to the regulations. A lot of them are minor, kind of like stripping a few things out that are really not pertinent. Also bringing into the regulations a bunch of stuff that's on the website right now is like memoranda, like, oh, you need to do this too, oh, you need to do that too, and doing that. So while we're at it, we can add in a discussion about sunsetting section 2.4. Remember that when we do this, everything is going to be subject to public hearing specifically about the changes that we're going to make. So we should make sure that we have our ducks in a row about that and why we're doing it. So that we can be able to present that in a coherent way to the public.
Well, I think it would be general courtesy if we can find out who these property owners are, where these properties are, to reach out to them and say, do you have any plans of developing this site and trying to use this, grandfathering in clause?
Well, it's not a matter of that. They can, if they.
Yeah, but if we change it.
Well, it's if you want to find out, I mean, we have to look at plans that have passed site plan review and have not yet been built.
Right. That's what I'm saying. And just to reach out to them and say, okay, if Gary's shaking his head, no, you don't want to do that.
So all I'm asking is that we do a little investigation. I don't know how difficult it is to find out how many of these are still in the books. I'm not interested in reaching out to anybody or rattling anybody's cages. I just want to know that if we do look to modify that clause or eliminate it, what the implications are so that we can think about how we might want to approach it or not.
I can look into that. I'll contact Kristen and from the planning department.
Thank you.
Or yeah, Jim or Fred too, Sherry would know, probably have their finger on those properties.
Okay, well, it's 9:45. If there's nothing else, I'm looking at everybody. I need a motion to adjourn.
So
So
I move-
moved.
Second.
Second.
Good go.
Okay. Well,
I think you were just gonged, Andy.
no, I'm just trying to decide whose name to put first here. I got it. This has all got to be documented. Okay, I'm going to take this as a vote by application, acclamation application. I've been talking too long. Any objections to adjourning the meeting?
No.
No.
Good night,
Good night,
everybody.
everybody.
Draw.
Good night, all. Thank
Yeah,
you
good
all.
night.
Great meeting. Well
Yeah.
done.